Hello guys, and welcome to my guide for the Protection Warrior in 8.1.5. If you guys don't know me, my name is Squiggle, and today I'm going to be bringing you guys through what I do for the Warrior in mainly Mythic Plus situations. I have been playing the Prot Warrior for just roughly over a month right now. I really do like playing it in the Reaping Affix, and because none of my friends really like to take the tank role, I have stepped up to the plate and I am currently playing the tank for all of our Mythic Plus dungeons. So in the past I have actually played Protection Warrior in Mythic raiding before, so I think I have a decent outlook on what the Protection Warrior is like in the current raid tier and how to mitigate damage. I'm going to go over this briefly, but overall I do recommend this more as being a Mythic Plus guide, simply because of my experience in the current tier. In this video I'm going to go over a lot of factors about what is going to make our Protection Warrior do an insane amount of damage in keys, as well as being extremely sturdy, just being the rock that your group needs, not requiring too much healing, and overall just being a very solid tank for all of your Mythic Plus endeavors. This is going to go over things such as talents, Azerite traits, rotation, macros, and what sort of other add-ons that you can use in order to increase your gameplay, such as the weak auras that I have in this video. I will also be going over what sort of build we want to go in terms of stats and trinkets, and what sort of mindset you should be having if you are going between tanking for raid and tanking for Mythic Plus dungeons. So without further ado, here is my guide, and I hope you guys enjoy. So now we are going to have a quick look at the viability of what the Protection Warrior looks like in the current keys with the Reaping Affix. Now as you guys can see, all of these high keys are pretty much done by the Protection Warrior. The Brewmaster Monk is the only one that even comes close to being able to absorb that sort of damage at the high keys. However, you guys can see that the strength of the Warrior is pretty much undeniable. We are seeing that at these high keys, the warriors are the ones that can really start to take the most punishment from the tyrannical bosses. The tyrannical bosses are going to hit for very hard melee damage. For instance, if you are looking at keys such as King's Rest, the second boss is just going to completely truck the tank no matter what you're playing. If you are not playing something like a warrior or a brewmaster, you're simply just going to get out damage, and before your healer can even top you up, you are just simply going to die. This class really does give a lot of AoE utility as well with the Shockwave. Now I am going to say that the AoE utility of Shockwave is probably not as much when you are comparing it to Ring of Peace and Leg Sweep from the Monk, or a Death Grip from the Blood DK. However, the damage that the Prot Warrior brings and the survivability that it has more than makes up for this over the course of an entire dungeon. Now, just briefly, I'm going to go over what sort of things you should aim for when it comes to gear, and what you should do when it comes to your Azerite traits. So to start off with, I'm going to show you guys a cookie cutter damage build that you can run for the Protection Warrior. This is going to include 3 Bastion of Might and 3 Deafening Crash. Now, of course, when you get one of each of these traits, it is actually going to be extremely strong when it comes to survivability options. However, when you stack this trait, it really pushes you towards being a DPS tank. Now, after this, I recommend that you guys take good caution when it comes to taking your second and third tier traits. For example, when you get Vampiric Speed or Blood Siphon, it significantly increases your HPS over the length of a dungeon, to the fact where you can literally run with these big AoE damage traits, and then you can make up for them later down in your lines and probably still be okay for 99% of content. However, if you guys want to go a little bit more defensively, I recommend you guys look at the following Azerite traits. The Bloodsport is actually going to be extremely strong for the Protection Warrior. It's going to make our Ignore Pain, which is pretty much going to be up all of the time. It is going to make it do even more Absorb, and it is going to give you 40 leech for 8 seconds. Basically, while you're in combat, this leech is pretty much going to be up all the time. And then after this, you want to look at certain pieces that are going to have the Bonded Soul piece. Now as well, if you're looking for some more defensive traits, especially ones that do have a little bit of stats on them, I recommend that you guys look at something like Bonded Souls. Now this is actually going to do an insane amount of healing over the course of a dungeon, and on top of this, it is going to give you and your nearest ally, 242 haste for 5 seconds, and this is going to be really good for doing extra damage and also keeping yourself alive, as haste is one of our best stats, which I will get onto in good time. So if you're going for a nice defensive build, I recommend that you guys run 1 Deafening Crash, 1 Bastion of Might, and as many of these Bonded Souls and the Bloodsport traits as you can find. For talents, most of the picks are actually going to be very stock standard and very mandatory when it comes to your Mythic Plus environment, as well as when it comes to raiding encounters. Into the Fray is going to be completely irreplaceable, just an insane amount of haste, and it gives you so many stats, so much extra damage, and so much survivability. After this, you're going to be looking no further than the Crackling Thunder. I think that this is really good for Mythic Plus, as it really allows you to get your aggro on when it comes to bigger area of effects, especially if you have some greedy DPS who do a lot of damage. This Crackling Thunder along with Unstoppable Force is going to pretty much keep them alive and keep all of the threat on you at all times. Next up, like I said, the Unstoppable Force is going to increase the damage of our Thunderclap by 100% and reduce its cooldown by 50%. As this talent is completely busted right now, it is making us do obscene amounts of damage, upwards of 55 or 60% over the course of a Mythic Plus dungeon. This is really strong, and it basically gives the Protection Warrior its identity it has today. After this, we're going to have Bolster. This is going to make our Last Stand have a slightly reduced cooldown, which is going to be made even lower with Anger Management, and it is going to give you basically a shield block over 15 seconds. Now this basically means that your windows where you're blocking during the course of a dungeon are going to be extremely high, and you want to make sure that you are taking this talent at all times. Now next up, this is where you can pretty much choose what you want to do, the Rumbling Earth versus Stormbolt. Now I go with Rumbling Earth pretty much because I'm lazy and I like to pull nice and big. It means that I can keep my Shockwave on cooldown as much as possible, and it pretty much means that I can go from Shockwaving in a pack to Shockwaving the Reaping that comes straight after it. Stormbolt is going to be very good for certain dungeons where you need to priority stun certain targets, and overall it is a very strong talent in this tier. After this, Booming Voice is something that you're going to go 100% of the time. There are times where people go Devastator when it comes to single target experiences. However, I think Booming Voice is really good as it gives you an instant ignore pain or an instant shield block, which can really help you in a pinch. Last but not least, we are going to see Anger Management being extremely strong. This is basically going to allow you to cycle your rage through and allow you to get more damage and survivability over the course of a few pulls. So basically it means that you can keep everything flowing nice and consistently, and it can bring your shield wall down to about 2-minute cooldown and your Last Stand down to about a 1-minute cooldown, which is extremely powerful. For trinkets, there are a few combinations of trinkets that I really do recommend you guys run. My first combination is pretty much a all-rounded trinket combo. So I recommend that you guys run at least one shield trinket, either this one from Mithrax that I've got here, which has a nice haste socket in it, or the one from Opulence that you can get on Heroic or Mythic at either 400 or 415 eye level respectively. And basically both of these are going to give you a good amount of HPS over the course of a dungeon, and pretty much mean that your healer can do a lot more damage over this course, or they can focus on healing other people when the situation arises. After this, I recommend you guys run one trinket which has a great amount of stats on it. My one that I have is the Jez Howler. This is going to give me and my group a lot of versatility over the course of a dungeon, and mine has 410 eye level with a 40 haste gem in it as well. So essentially this is going to be giving myself a good defensive and offensive buff, as well as the rest of my group when they need it. Now, when it comes to stats, I recommend that you guys are going for as much strength as possible, followed by as much haste and then versatility as possible. So this means that if you do have a few gem slots, you want to make sure that you are getting one as your strength gem. This is going to increase your overall armor and your overall survivability and damage when the situation arises. Now on top of this, haste is going to be extremely strong as well, as it decreases the cooldown of our shield slam and our thunderclap. Next up, I'm going to show you guys a quick couple of clips from a few Mythic Plus dungeons that I did a few weeks ago with some of my friends. Now these are really going to accentuate the strengths of the Protection Warrior and what I do in a lot of keys in order to reduce the damage that I take. Now overall, I recommend as soon as you get into a pool, you are going to be using your Demoralizing Shout, and you are going to be trying to get as many Ignore Pains and shield blocks out as possible. Now at this point you can see that I'm taking an insane amount of damage even though I'm doing these things for my mitigation, so I start using my shield wall, and I'm going to start using my last stand as well when I do run out of my shield blocks. After this, I'm making sure that I use my victory rushes as much as possible, and I'm just going to keep on refreshing as many Ignore Pains as I can. I recommend that you guys get yourself a really good Ignore Pain weak aura, as you can find very good ways to clip it and to make sure that you are taking as little damage as possible. This is pretty much going to be our main mitigation tool, and it gives us a very slow intake of damage over the course of a fight, which makes it insanely easy for healers to heal you, as opposed to characters like the Blood Death Knight, where your health is going up and down like a bouncy castle. People are going to see that the Protection Warrior takes a very slow intake of damage, and it is very easy for them to be healed over a period of time, even though they do not have too many self-healing abilities for themselves. So our rotation for single target and AoE are pretty much going to be the same. We're going to open up with an avatar on pull before we use our charge. We're going to charge in, make sure that we are getting as many thunderclaps, demoralizing shouts and shield slams as possible. We're basically going to be putting our thunderclap as every second GCD, making sure that we are weaving in whatever abilities are needed in between them, and we are pretty much going to be keeping our Ignore Pain up as much as possible. You are going to be using your shield block liberally. You cannot keep it at 100% uptime, but if you are taking intense amounts of damage, make sure that you are weaving in your last stand as well as your shield blocks in order to mitigate the overall damage that you are getting. As you guys can see here versus Jez Howless, there isn't much damage that you do take right at the start of the fight. However, on the last boss, you can actually see me needing to make good use of my shield blocks and my Ignore Pains in order to stay alive, as I do have to solo the last couple of percent of the boss. Make sure that you guys are pretty much playing the tank to this sort of extent. Make sure that even in high keys you do not require much healing at all, and if the healer dies, make sure that you can keep yourself up for the last couple of percent of a boss, or until the healer can get resurrected. Now I'm going to quickly show you what happens when we are playing versus a slightly more dangerous boss, such as Overseer Krogus. Now we're going to make sure that we are keeping a 100% uptime on our Ignore Pain, and whenever we are getting the circle on ourselves, we are making sure to refresh the Ignore Pain before and after this damage hits us. This basically means that we are taking as smooth damage input as possible, and we are allowing our healer to heal other people in the group and make sure that they are living throughout the fight. This is mainly due to having insane amounts of burst damage for AoE windows. As you guys can see, as soon as I take the hit, I'm going to get my next Ignore Pain up as soon as possible. If I am taking excess amounts of damage, I am also going to get my last stand on cooldown as early as possible in order to basically remedy this situation. Right now I'm not panicking too much. I'm going to make sure that I'm getting my shield block up a little bit quicker, and I'm doing as much damage as possible. You guys can see that I'm doing a fair amount of damage. I think I finished this fight on about 13 or 14k damage single target, which isn't too bad, seeing as the class can easily do upwards of 100k when it comes to reaping. So right now you can see this is going to be the situation where we really need to focus on staying alive and dishing out as much damage as possible. We can see that the healer is nearing we only have one other DPS class up at the same time. I stand corrected, I probably finished this around 12k DPS, but nonetheless the damage doesn't really matter in this scenario. We are trying to take as little damage as possible, trying to make sure that the healer can heal the rest of the group, and it's just trying to do the mechanics as well as possible. So right now I'm going to actually use my human racial to get out of that stun. I've got about 2% that I've got to get for myself. I'm making sure that I'm keeping my shield block as high uptime as possible. I'm going to use my last stand as soon as it is up, jam my health potions, and basically pray to kill the boss before this guy kills me. And at the end of the day, it pretty much saved the key, which I'm very happy about. Doing this boss without lust on Tyrannical can actually be quite tedious. Now, as you guys can see, finish off the boss, finish off the cannons, and the key is saved because we self-mitigated to the best of our ability. Now we are going to have a quick look at what sort of macros and UI we want to be running on the Protection Warrior. So to start off with, like I said, there are a few defensive things that I'm really monitoring over time, as well as I have my health bar and my rage bar right in the middle of my screen, as watching these things like a hawk will insanely increase your survivability. After this, I'm making sure that I am macroing my trinket, my Jazz Howler, onto my avatar, so basically I do not have to worry too much about it. I can worry more about what sort of pulls that I have to do over the course of the dungeon. And of course, if you guys want links to these sort of things, make sure to check the description down below after the video. I will post my weak auras that I have set up myself, and I will also post what to use for the macros if you want to put in these trinkets. They are Now that just about wraps up my guide in 8.1.5 for the Mythic Plus Protection Warrior. If you guys have any questions, make sure to ask down below. If you guys like this sort of video, make sure to give it a thumbs up and to subscribe for more content. Now I say this a lot, but I really dislike my internet that I have. As soon as I do have the internet to put up my stream, I will be streaming a lot of high keys and raiding in the near future as soon as I get my NBN. Australian internet is not known for being that great, however there are a select few people who can actually use this internet and can stream, which hopefully will be me in a short amount of time. Thanks for watching guys, and I will see you next time.